My name is Christian Ray, and I moved halfway across the country to build a blacksmithing forge from the ground up so that I could be part of the centuries-old tradition of making beautiful and lethal masterpieces out of metal. It hasn't been easy, but here we are. This is Ronin Blades. Hello viewers, welcome back to Ronin Blades. Today we're going to make something very special, but first a little story. From time to time people ask me what it is that I do, which is kind of hard to answer. If I say I'm a blacksmith or a bladesmith, I always have to explain it, which is a bit of a buzzkill. So instead I say, I make swords. And then they say things like, oh wow, you're so interesting and attractive. Thing is though, I've never actually made a sword, which makes me a liar. And I'm sorry. But today we're going to change that. We'll be making a sword out of this. Now this is a car strap. Plenty of good metal in here to use, we just got to get it out. Best way to do that? Hit it with a hammer. Literally that easy. And in here we got a coil spring. Good metal to use, but it's a little thin for a sword, maybe a rapier, but I'm not going to be making a rapier today. This is what I'm interested in. This is the inside of the shock absorber itself. I'm not 100% sure what kind of metal it is. I know it's steel and I know it's high carbon because of the spark test. Let's see what we can make out of it. And the forge was lit, heating up our steel and making life pretty tough for our microphones. It goes by drawing out the steel first, which involves hammering it down to a flattened side, making it easier to hold on to. As the steel is flattened, it starts to take the first rudimentary shapes of a sword, and the remaining stock is drawn forward, giving us extra length, which we'll need later. Moving metal is about more than just hitting it with a hammer. You have to get the mass of the material to go in the direction you want it to go. Hitting it on two sides forces the material to go straight and therefore in the direction you want, whereas hitting it on one side just makes it flat. Not having enough material to get the shape I want might be embarrassing, but it's no reason to stop working. Moving on to the tang will show me just how long my handle will be, and it'll show me any extra material I can use to make the sword longer. A through tang is a tang that goes all the way through the handle to the other side where it is then peened or threaded. This kind of handle construction will make the handle very strong, but I have to be careful to match up my number of strikes on each side, so I wind up with a long, thin square that can go all the way through the handle. The last thing you want is a floppy tang, so I have to make sure it doesn't get too thin. And once the tang is finished, I can go back to the sword body to see if I can squeeze out a few more inches from the leftover stock. That completed, I move on to the most essential part of any sword, the tip. A proper tip is very important. It is the piece of the sword you show to the world and pierces through your enemies. Therefore, the tip has to be hammered in with care and precision. It's important to keep straightening the material as you go to make sure your hammer hits true. After I have the tip forged in, it's time for the nitty-gritty. The process known as deplenishing involves going over hammered steel to even out the hammer marks. The hammer marks left in the steel can be a pain to grind out and leave your work looking very unfinished. Going over it again with a square-shaped hammer reduces the rounded hammer marks. It also helps to straighten the steel up so it looks nice and pretty at the end. Though it can be a time-consuming process, deplenishing is really important as it saves time and energy and allows you to keep more of the material in your sword where it belongs. Up next is the bevel, which involves hitting the side of the sword where the edge is going to be at a 45-degree angle. This helps draw out the edge itself and saves time on the grinder. It's also the part of the process where your sword starts to actually look like a sword, which can bring back the life to a smith who's been hammering on it like I have for hours. But all those hours are worth it once you finish the rough forging and you get to look at your piece. Let's check it out. And here you have it, an 18-inch blade, 23.5 inches overall. I wish I had enough material for the long sword, but a short sword was good enough for Trevor Belmont, should be good enough for you too. Next time, profiling, pre-grinding, and heat treatment. See you then. Ha! The fun one.